welcome to this week's Olsem Wanem program. In this episode, we place the spotlight on child marriage in Papua New Guinea. Child marriage is defined as marriage before the age of 18. The current minimum legal age of marriage in Papua New Guinea allows Papua New Guinean girls especially to get married when they are still regarded as children.
In Papua New Guinea, the current legal marriageable ages are 16 years for girls and 18 years for boys. However, these years can be lowered to 14 and 16 years respectively with permission from parents and the court. The reviewed act, which will be brought to the floor of Parliament come next month, the marriageable age for both females and males will be 18 years. The right to free and full consent to a marriage is recognized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, which Papua New Guinea is a signatory to, and these international laws strongly prohibits child marriage. Article 4 on the Convention on the Rights of the Child strongly outlines that the government of a country has the responsibility to take all available measures to make sure children's rights are respected, protected, and fulfilled. Governments are then obliged to take all necessary steps to ensure that the minimum standards set by the Convention in these areas are being met. In some instances, this may involve changing existing laws or creating new ones.
So there is an unbalance sometimes in the marital, which is a concern for this office too, in terms of very older people getting married to very younger girls.
Early age marriages threaten to increase with the expanding youth population in developing countries, and Papua New Guinea is no exception. Though arranged marriage is entrenched in tradition and culture, which sees most girls married off at a very young age, change is possible. With the right blend of effective policies and political will, millions of girls will have the opportunity to fulfill their potential.
The Child Welfare Act was reviewed because of the fundamental reason why the Child Welfare Act was not applicable to the current times. The girl has the extreme right in terms of her own future, her own life. That should be protected. The legislation now protects that right and also gives responsibility. One really good thing about the current reviewed Lugard Picnic Act is to make sure that there is parental responsibility. The parental responsibility should be there when they know that the child must go to school. 18 should be 18-year-old girl should be at a college or at a university. So we are advocating, this law advocates for the right of that girl.
Papua New Guinea is taking a positive step in ending child marriages by bringing the reviewed act to the floor of Parliament to be passed that allows Papua New Guineans to get married when they reach adulthood, which is 18 years.
I want to appeal to young girls that there is a right that is protected. There is a government-mandated office that protects their right. And they should if they are forced into getting married, if there is circumstances that they cannot avoid, they should be able to report to welfare officers in the provinces or in the district. Or in Mosby, we have the NCD welfare office and the office of the director here.
Forced child marriages may not be too common in PNG, but arranged marriages is one thing that can be found in rural areas in all regions of Papua New Guinea. Girls are encouraged to seek help if ever they are faced with such situations.
Review of this act is a positive outcome for the government, and I'm seeing that we are actually implementing the Convention on the Rights of the Child in our country.
Welcome back, and you're watching Olsem Wanem. For the sake of the mother and the child, a woman's body must be fully capable to cater for childbearing. According to health experts, a teenage girl will face various complications during childbirth if they fall pregnant at a very young age. Teenage pregnancies that come about as a result of early marriages come with various negative health risks.
A major danger of child marriage is that it leads to girls having babies before their bodies are fully developed. Research by health experts showed that pregnancy and childbirth complications are the leading cause of that for girls aged 15 to 19.
You 14 or 15 or 16 years old or so, sorry, and bahad lo karibs la pigini because bun bla you fully grown yet na pigini can go past, and then can bagarap him you lo inside kind problem you can kiss him you by need him operation long doctor arouse him baby long bell or sem you na karim or sambla ol trangu gele or stablo village where no got chance lo go la housing now baby by die inside lo bell. And then go sting inside lo bell, time die finish, and then by walking bagrap lo bladder, place lo pispis or rectum, place lo pek, walking hole, and then by you behind long this la baby sting na come out you by you pek na pispis long big place lo pikinini. And this let me hard lo stereotype.
You look at the reproductive organ development. The reproductive organ development reaches the stage at about the age of 13, 14, where the organs are now at the stage where they start to produce the eggs, and quite often young girls at the age can easily fall pregnant. But the maturation process continues until the age of about 18, where most of the reproductive organ development is completed. And by the time you go beyond the age of 18 to 21, the rest of the development of the internal organs, plus the psychological development, physical development, bone growth, eventually complete by the age of 21. So the general rule is that a person who is capable to have a pregnancy that is safe and mentally prepared for it will be between the age of 18 and 21.
Teenage marriages make girls far more vulnerable to the unavoidable health risks such as early pregnancy and childbirth. This makes their babies more vulnerable to difficulties which they may face as soon as they are born.
Tend to generally have a much increased risk of infection generally. Now, if you look at the baby as they grow, quite often the mothers of teenage pregnancies, they tend to suffer from postpartum blues. When they do, their baby could quite easily be neglected, and if they do, then they run in the risk of having low temperatures, immediately after birth. They run the risk of having low blood sugar, which we call hypoglycemia. They run the risk of not being fed well, so they may be dehydrated. So all those things can happen during the immediate part of the baby's days after delivery, hours and days after delivery. Of course, as the baby grows, quite often they may have problem with feeding and care. So, quite often the young mother may not be able to breastfeed well, and they tend to resort to doing bottle feeding, which is usually not advisable. And bottle-fed babies, usually in our setting in Papua New Guinea, in rural communities, may not be that good, and settlements may not be good because they run the risk of all sorts of infection that are associated with poor care of bottle feeding.
KLM said by name hard stered long game chance long this la pikinini long organize something where pikinini need him long na pikinini need him food susu past them. Hard long 15-year-old girl long exclusively breastfeeding susu.
According to a research done by the United Nations, of the 16 million adolescent girls who give birth every year, about 90% are already married in developing countries.
Long antenatal clinic, me place I got 30, 40 new plan mama I come along starting clinic or get a day along Port Moresby General Hospital. So I think inside the city must be at least 50 new pregnancies a day. And out of those 50, at least 20-30% of them are young black girl in a marriage yet.
Teenage pregnancy is an issue. 20 years ago in this country, teenage pregnancy probably account to about 15% of pregnancies. And now teenage pregnancies is got quite higher than what it is in the past. In fact, the statistics that we see now in both public and private institutions and all throughout the country is about 25% now, 24-25%. So it is quite an issue for us in Papua New Guinea.
Early age marriage means early sexual activity and in most cases, early childbearing. This can lead to serious health issues for both the mother and the child. Encouraging adolescents to wait for the right age for childbearing will eliminate a significant source of health risk for girls.
In this part of the program, we speak to the PNG Chief of Mission for the International Office for Migration. He points out some of the obvious things that most people don't see as trafficking and forced child marriage. We ask, does it occur in Papua New Guinea?
Thank you very much, Mr. Gigari, for accepting to take part in the show. Tell us of some of the things that happen on a daily basis that most people don't see it as trafficking.
We're referring to forced labor and exploitation for sexual purposes. To describe it very simply, it's modern day slavery. That's what trafficking is. Not to be confused with drug trafficking, which is separate, and not to be confused with smuggling. Although it's interrelated, it is a different phenomenon. Trafficking is basically modern day slavery. That's how I would like everyone to understand this phenomenon. Now, in terms of where it could be happening in PNG and people without realizing that it's actually happening. So first of all, it is happening in PNG. We know it is happening. Sometimes it is obvious when someone is locked up and forced into sexual servitude. Everyone understands that that's wrong and that's trafficking. Also, when someone is locked in a room or in a farm or in a mine somewhere, their documents taken away, they can't communicate with everyone, and they're forced to work like a slave. Also, everyone understands that this is wrong and this is trafficking. But, as you say, there are other manifestations of trafficking that people may not intuitively see as something fundamentally wrong. One such example, of course, is forced underage marriage, when the individual has no decision over their future and is forced into a relationship with someone without consent. That can qualify in certain cases in trafficking, and we know that in some areas it's happening. We don't know how widespread it is, we don't know if it's happening every day, but we know it's happening.
This happen in PNG too, like what you mentioned about these things happening in other countries?
Yeah, so we're assisting the government in many areas of counter-trafficking. One of them will be and continues to be collection of data, collection of information, so that we soon will have a better picture together with the Department of Justice on exactly how many, where, and how it's happening. Right now, it's difficult to quantify, and I wouldn't want to speculate, but we are getting a lot of anecdotal evidence and a lot of unofficially unconfirmed stories of this happening in the big urban areas and in the highlands. So depending on the community and depending on the dynamics of that community, which is also partly intertwined with the traditional cultural elements that come into this. So we have to be very careful in how we address this. We have to take a balanced view and understand that some of this might stem from many, many hundreds, even thousands of years ago. At the same time, we have to factor in today's legal reality and the paramount importance of human rights and the rights of children. So we have to find the right balance, but the bottom line is that we have to emphasize the importance of the individual having the right to make their own choice.
Are there any cases where boys are being trafficked and forced into marriage, both locally and overseas?
In PNG, I personally have not heard of stories of boys being forced into marriage. That is not to say that it's not happening. We just don't have any evidence to provide. Globally, of course, I've heard, and there is confirmed information is happening in many, many countries, including South Asia and Africa. You will hear many horror stories of forced marriages, and that is something that exists as a problem on a global level. This is the law of the land, and every country has the sovereign right to pass its own laws and to legislate as the representatives see fit. So it is important, though, as I have emphasized before, it is very important to understand and to make sure that the people who are entering into marriage are doing so of their own accord and are not being forced into that union. So I think that is an important aspect that we need to focus on, not only in the context of trafficking, but in a wider context of human rights and the rule of law.
Okay, in terms of awareness on trafficking in PNG, what can you say about our government, the steps that they are taking to address trafficking within PNG?
For the government, there are numerous problems that you have to deal with, and then you have to prioritize those problems in terms of how you invest your resources and how you allocate funding. So I personally believe that counter-trafficking activities should be prioritized. I think it should be at the top of the agenda. And I'm very happy to say that our close partners in this effort, the Department of Justice and Attorney General, is recognizing this as a serious problem, and we're supporting them in moving forward on the implementation of the law that was passed. The Department of Justice, with our assistance, is now forming something called NRM, National Referral Mechanism, where we're bringing in all other ministries, police, customs, and other key public institutions to work together and to work out a plan on how to tackle this throughout the country.
Child marriage is a global issue. In this segment, we bring to your attention what girls in other developing countries face when they are forced into marrying men many years older than them. Statistics reveal a lot of young girls die during childbirth.
Children in Malawi, especially when they're young, they have very high hopes for the future. They dream about being doctors, they dream about being pilots. But the environment in which they live in does not always enable those dreams to come true.
Sindi nakakamizidwe kumane kune kufuna kwanga kwa ine chifukwa chakuti chithandizo chimandisowa kuti ndipanga bwanji ngakhale niwapita ku sukulu zovaso zimene zoperewera.
Mavuto amene ndakumana ndoti 40 munthu yeye anali wamkulu ine ndinali mwana chilichonse chimene anganene ine ndimachivomera kuti ine ndinali wamng'ono.
Taveseka kuti akawurapira kupolisi muja arabasa makuza kuti basi weurani
nenu nimatingakhala nimatingaganiza ndachiphera tsogolo zedi.
Child marriage is a form of gender-based discrimination. It's a form of violence against women because it largely affects girls. And if you look at the consequences of child marriage on the rights of women and girls, it's devastating. 1 in 2 girls in Malawi are married before their 18th birthday.
mayangana kana ndovulika kwambiri ndechisakaliro chimasowa ineyo sezinali benefit nali wang'ono mindu ndomwe nali nayo vulema ndipweteka kwambiri maso tudanda kwambiri so mphanga amene ali apoyo akula ndi moyo wovulika kwambiri ifa malo eni okhala
ndinali ndisadakonzeke koma ndikuzunzika kumene ndimazunzika kumene kuna ndipangitsa kuti ndipange zinthu ngati zimenezi koma munayo sinali kumbukumbu yanga choti ndingakhale naye ndimene ndinalili msinkhu wanga sindimakhala osangalala kwambiri.
What are the main factors that lead to early marriage? Poverty. She thinks poverty leads to early marriage in Malawi. Is there another factor? Yes. Cultural practices. Parents forcing their children or girls to get married, yes? So, what are the impacts of early marriage on us? As Malawi's Platinum?
It leads to school dropout.
Early marriages lead to school dropouts. How will it lead to school dropouts?
Child marriage continues to perpetuate inequality because girls are not able to go to school. It affects their health. It affects their ability to marry only when they are willing and able to do so. And it affects their ability to be able to be free from violence.
Sanga kumefora dandu zore kwaredwa mundika kameza dakhala mpaka urenga mimba mpaka dabeza kuti mamuno jamangu nimenya umandichiranganza ndedabeza kuti mimba janapita pachabe ntaona kuti kupitiriza bende basa bambo achatabwera tsopano kumva zvinezvo ndadangoti basi tiye kuti kunyumba.
These girls, when they come on, they are still young, they're around 14, 15, they are scared because they are still young, not much what, either physically or even mentally. To compare with the number of young girls who were giving birth in those years, like in 1990s and nowadays, the number is increasing.
Nilini mwana na beluga jana. Nakwelewa chifukwa choti makolo anga nilibe. Ndeni matinga makhala na agogo, matinga ndizipita ku sukulu amanuza kuti usamapite ku sukulu tizilima. Ineyo nafuna pamavuto amene nali nawo kuti mwina ni masuki. Mulungu akanisunga ni moyo mwana wanga amene nabereka nzamuphunzitsa sukulu. Mwana wanga amene nabereka sizoti achakhala ngati naneso.
In Malawi, there is no clear minimum age of marriage. The current law is very ambiguous. It has a lot of gaps.
This is the Constitution of the Republic of Malawi, and the Section 22, subsection 1, says no person over the age of 18 years shall be prevented from entering into marriage. Our Child Care Protection and Justice Act is talking about 16 and above. So I think the government will do something to make sure that there is clear distinction, or so that whenever a court is sitting, should know which age a child or a boy should enter into marriage. Because as of now, the courts are in dilemma.
Child marriage is as a result of government failure to address the rights of women and girls and to empower them. There's this vicious cycle of violation of rights and inequality. If there are no opportunities for girls to go to school, they get married. When they get married, still they are not able to continue with education. So they continue being subordinate. They continue being invisible in society. The most basic starting point to protect girls against child marriage is having a very clear minimum age of marriage. It ensures a uniform application of the law. If you're under the age of 18, you cannot be married. The government needs to make sure that they have a very clear plan of how they want to address child marriage. Having a national plan that sets out the legal reforms that need to be done, the programmatic initiatives that need to be taken in order to address child marriage. The consequences of child marriage are far-reaching. They don't just affect girls in childhood, they follow them to their adulthood, they affect their families, they affect their communities, and in the end, they affect the whole country.
And that's all we have time for on Olsem Wanem. Thank you to all who have participated in this episode. If you have any comments or stories you would like to share, please contact us via the address on your screen or visit us on our Facebook page. For now, enjoy the rest of your viewing on your #1 station, EMTV.